I'm dropped on the floor. That's the thing, right?
Yeah, so hello, this is a welcome to the North America session. As we are now online, we're currently facing here a topic with the screen. It doesn't unfortunately allow me to share the slides, although we shared it until a minute ago. So if you allow me just to ask a colleague to bring up the slides from the other side, and then we can get started. So just a short moment, please. I will stop sharing. And I would ask our speakers here to introduce yourself, to fill a little bit the gap while we'll solve the issue with the slides. If that's okay for you, we can get started with Jem joining us today from BluSky.
Thank you, Christina, and it is a pleasure to be here. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to discuss a very exciting topic. My name is Jem Pagán, CEO of BluSky Consulting. We are a consulting firm based in Maryland and New York City in the United States. We focus on all things IoT related. We have a very strong emphasis on the people side of smart city deployments and ecosystem development, which makes this a very exciting launch pad for us to begin to foster collaboration nationally that we believe will help the accelerated adoption of FIWARE in North America. It's great to be here. Our team is here, and we're looking forward to further collaborations as we go deeper into FIWARE. Thank you, Christine.
I guess I'll jump in then. My name is Mark Rewers. I'm the CTO under Jem at BluSky Consulting. I can't tell you how honored I am to be here. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody that's been here for all day. Thank you. Alex?
I'm Alexander Soley, and I work with Jem, and I work under Jem as well. And like Mark Rewers before him, you say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or.
And my name is Philippe Cases. I am the CEO of Topio Networks. Topio Networks is a firm based in San Francisco. We are an industry analyst firm, and we track broadly the business of connected things, which, of course, includes everything that is leveraging data coming from IoT, from smart cities to Industry 4.0 to all the many different aspects that this technology revolution is taking. Very excited to be with FIWARE. I mean, every time I'm spending time with you guys, I mean, there is so much that is happening over in 1 year, right? So very excited to be there, and very excited to be part of your ecosystem.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for your introductions. I have asked my colleague Karen, who is today with us as a co-host, and I say also hello to her, to please bring up the slides while we are speaking. And I would just ask Karen if that's okay for her. Karen, can you give me a signal, please? Karen, can you hear us?
Yes, sorry. I am trying to, it should show shortly if everything works well with the deck. So okay. Please check if that's right.
Super. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you. Yeah, then let's give me the chance to give a very warm welcome again now with the official slides cover. Really having the chance to see everybody who is with us today on one page. Our topic today will be North America. And why is this so exciting to us? This is because North America as such is not only a huge and a growing market, and it's not even completely new to FIWARE, but it's a market that is currently opening up to so many different verticals together with open source solutions and also new trend technologies when it comes to the digital twin, when it comes to artificial intelligence, when it comes to completely new business models that for us, it is an exciting voyage, if I may say so, or journey to grow our activities in the United States and Canada and in Americas as such. Said that, we do have also a LATAM session that is tomorrow. That really looks into Latin America in a more specific way. Tonight, and basically tonight for European joiners today, and rather afternoon for those joining us from North America, we will look into everything that is about the North American market. And we do have really a tremendous lineup of interesting speakers here that are all specialists in their field when it comes to North America, as they have built up business there basically from the scratch. So why are we running then the session in such a way that we will do a little bit, a kind of innovative change or mix of a workshop and a panel? This is because by the end of tonight, or by the end of the session, which will be in roughly 90 minutes from now, we want to have some great answers that are good for the community and the overall ecosystem with FIWARE as we're building up further activities in North America. I'm also extremely pleased to announce again something that we mentioned in the grand opening of FIWARE SmartFest, very, very first session today, that FIWARE has reached the 400 member. And actually, while we were speaking there, we went already almost up to 415. But wow. Number 400, yeah, that's really exciting. But with our member 400, while we were planning the session already, we said this is really a great platform to say, okay, tonight, as we have prepared this workshop together, we'll give them the chance to also introduce BluSky for a few minutes as a member number 400. And then all other speakers have the chance to give a few words on their activities as well. So I will pass over to Jem. They will share 2 slides on their activities and their company, and then we'll move back to the slides that Karen has just shared with us. Jem, are you ready to go?
Sure.
I just need the slides. Karen, if I could have access.
Let's see. Is it this one?
Nope. I have a separate slide deck. If you can pass me access, that'd be great.
Oh, great. Sorry. I'll give you the floor.
Yep. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome, Jim.
So BluSky Consulting was established in April of 2017 with the express purpose of building out what we felt at that time would be a boutique consulting firm focused and specialized in all things related to digital twin IoT technologies, including the analytics, the context brokerage that happens between that, the backend APIs, but more importantly, the user experience and understanding that user journey was really important. We're certified as a minority company in the state of Maryland and New York, and we actually have a national certification as well. So we're pretty proud of the team and their efforts to diligently position us to participate in great projects like this. Thanks, Mark. You can move to the next slide.
Oops, gotta go back one.
It's okay.
I got excited. 2 seconds here.
It's okay. I believe the slide you're going to bring up really gives a snapshot of our services. So we believe in really addressing what we call the full stack journey of a digital twin or IoT project beyond just the technology architecture. We start with the use case and the experience planning. it's very important going forward that we understand the business requirements and how we convert use cases into go-to-market or production architectures and solutions is a part of what we developed over the last few years that really steps the business through a very complex sort of planning stage without having the requirement to understand the underlying complexities by bringing the experience forward and creating an experience during the design experience. We're able to immerse the client into the art of the possible, which is BluSky's #1 mantra. We believe that all is possible if we find the right collective, coherent individuals to go at a problem with the stated purpose of working collectively to solve that problem with measurable results. This is what drives us every day and challenges us as an organization to think outside of the box. The last thought I will leave with you with BluSky that I believe is differentiator for us is that we diligently practice the exponential organizational growth model, scale ideas. And a part of what you're witnessing today is the application of the exponential growth models to the core strategies that BluSky represents in the market. We're very excited for what Singularity University has produced, and we are very, very, very pleased with the progress we've made thus far. Thank you so much. Back to you,
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Jem. That was very interesting. Thank you. Yeah, while Kieran will support us bringing up the slides again, we will see another great message on that slide, and that's basically about Texas. Texas has become quite an important location for FIWARE because there is our very first iHub, our innovation hub in the US. And we're very pleased to have Humberto with us tonight and today, who is running this iHub. And before we really jump into our overall discussion, Humberto, what do you think? Do you want to tell us a little bit how that went, the whole setup, and what you're currently doing there? Humberto, we can't hear you. I have to say we had actually a great chat in the background before we went live, so I'm sure we'll hear him in a second.
Would you like me to show the first slide in the meantime, Christina, or should I wait for Humberto?
No, that's okay. We can go ahead to the very first slide and have a look at that and see if we can get Humberto back. It's maybe his headset. Okay, we cannot hear Humberto, although he's in green. So then I would just say I'll go a little bit through our agenda here, and then Humberto, you just try to make yourself comfortable and then try it out. The moment we hear you, we bring you back in, okay? So no problem at all. So yeah, you can see that here, the sentence that I just mentioned, or the bubble that I mentioned, Texas iHub, it's the first hub for FIWARE in the US. FIWARE runs a big network of iHubs worldwide. We have 21 of them, hubs that bring FIWARE technology and strategy as well as a local network together to work much closer to a local community and companies. And said that, it is obviously a very great success and jump to have this footprint now also growing in the US. Let's see if, Humberto, we can still not hear you. You are in green. Maybe you just want to reload your link and then we'll try it again. Okay. All right.
Maybe Christina, he can go out and then again, he will have to exit and come in, and then
that would also be
that helped us for another session where we were trying it also. Maybe he left, so maybe he's going to be back. So I leave you, let me know.
Yeah, thank you. It happens very rarely, but sometimes it happens. We'll get over this and hope to have him back in a second. All right. So then let's jump just into our session for today. And you can see here from the bubbles that we brought, and thanks again also for to BluSky who prepared that together with us. That this is quite an interesting path we want to take with all of you tonight. going really from looking what strategies of adaptations can be in North America, looking into verticals, surely talking about industry, agri-food, utilities, but also tourism, just the session that we had before this one here started. We want to look into trends, moving from trends also into something where we know that FIWARE is great. And this is when it comes to municipalities and to the public administration. Just with a side comment that FIWARE is becoming actually the de facto standard for smart cities in Europe, and many cities and countries worldwide recognize that very, very well. So we expect that also North America, and especially the US, will watch us carefully and open doors to further projects here. And this is why it's interesting to talk about that in a minute.
Maybe,
but also
maybe you can hear me now, Christina?
Yes, perfect.
Right. Thank you.
Okay,
Sorry
good.
about
Welcome back.
Yes.
Okay,
So,
let me just, Humberto, let me just finish quickly that slide, and then I will, then I think I will give you the word, because I think you can make it a perfect start into the discussion. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Wonderful, thank you. So we were just saying verticals, Industry 4.0 is obviously a big thing. It's Germany born, but it has made its way throughout Europe and to the world, and also a very important trend in North America. And said that when you look at these different verticals, they come up with new requirements in terms of careers. Is that about open source? Is it about certain verticals and technologies? All this is important to make a market grow and being successful in there. So we'll have a talk about that. And then look a little bit about the critical resources that are required, as well as best practices that can make us a great success in North America. And then to close this great last session for tonight, we will have a look how to accelerate activities and success together with partners and members, but also looking at certain industries and verticals again, and think, okay, where can we make it really a great success straight away? And we will also have a look into something that's happening currently in terms of green economy and green deals. And for this, it's a right perfect moment to hand over really to Humberto, because he will tell us a little bit about what he's currently doing and running in North America and the US. And then afterwards, we'll jump into the wide discussion with everybody. So Humberto, now we'll make it your moment.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Christina. So happy to be here. So just to tell you a little bit of what the Texas project is. The Texas project started as an economic and innovation development organization under the Innovation Texas umbrella. Basically, the focus is around innovation and technology, entrepreneurship, ecosystem creation, digital and clean transitions. That means clean tech, energy, renewable energy, etc., the circular economy, and skills and capacity building to support businesses in Texas and the US. The industries we play in is, as I mentioned, clean tech, renewable energy, life sciences and health tech, advanced manufacturing like Industry 4.0, the circular economy, which is transversal, defense, cybersecurity, and space tech. And recently we started in the creative industries. So we're really excited. And one of the things I wanted to just share really super quickly with you is the opportunities and where we see the opportunities for open source technologies and obviously the FIWARE ecosystem developing in the US. And I will start with the Biden rescue plan, which was $1.9 trillion. It's not over yet, but it's a lot of money going into the economy. But most interesting part of the recovery is the new American Jobs Plan. The American Jobs Plan is still negotiating between the White House and Congress, but it's basically the infrastructure plan for the U.S., and it's around $2.2 trillion with a T, and it covers transportation, domestic manufacturing, and job training, clean energy, housing, schools, hospitals, childcare, and other government facilities, and of course digital infrastructure, which is broadband and 5G, etc. Here's where we see great opportunities to develop and grow the FIWARE ecosystem with dedicated infrastructure, which is the traditional roads, bridges, ports, and the hybrid infrastructure, which takes the digital part into a big component of infrastructure. You're talking about the smart grid, and all the energy, the mobility infrastructure that's going to be heavily electrified. And on top of that, we're talking about $1.8 trillion for what they call the American Families Plan, which is most of it going to skills development, digital skills development, entrepreneurship mindset, regardless of if you're an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur or a government official that wants to change things. So we see with the climate and green agenda of the Biden administration linked to the European Green Deal and the Circular Economy Action Plan under the Green Deal, huge opportunities to work together. The transatlantic agenda recently presented, 75% of digital content in the world is produced in North America and Europe. So both regions create 75% of digital content. 55% more data flows via transatlantic cables than over trans-Pacific routes. So we have a really strong opportunity, relationship, connections, and now a really interesting agenda in those regions to promote open source technology.
Humberto,
just to finish.
Yeah.
Just to finish, why Texas? Well, Texas is the 9th largest economy in the world. We're really happy that Austin has been a magnet of attracting companies like Tesla, Oracle, Hewlett-Packard, etc., and a great place for innovation and entrepreneurship. So we're working in these industries, and we're really happy to be part of the FIWARE Foundation and the FIWARE ecosystem. And we think we can really scale the open source technologies in Texas for North America.
Yes, super.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Humberto. You gave me this one word that I wanted to pick up because you already basically making a great introduction also to a collaborative approach between Europe and North America, and yep. Seeing also a wider economy in that than just looking only onto North America. And I think this would be a great moment to bring Albert on the stage here. Albert, you are in Europe, but you are a wide-traveled, long-time traveled person with a huge success in all over the world and smart cities, but also in other domains. Do you want to comment on this while we're looking maybe at the first slide that Karen can show us? About strategies for adoption. I'm sure you have a lot to say here.
Yeah, thank you, Christina, and happy to meet all of the participants here, specifically the new members from BluSky. Happy to see you on board the FIWARE Foundation. I'm Albert Seubers. As Christina said, I'm living in Europe and the Netherlands, globally responsible within Atos. quite large IT services company, globally responsible for a smart city strategy and offering, and a member of the board of directors of the FIWARE Foundation. When looking at the opportunities in America, and I must say, I lived and worked in America for a while, a few years in Dallas, Texas. I'm still closely connected to the University of Texas in Dallas. The business models are different in America than we are used to in Europe. But with the open source, open standards approach of FIWARE, on top of what we see commonly happening in America is the investments in, and it was already touched on, the broadband networks, the free Wi-Fi to close the digital divide and make sure that it works. But if you put on top a unique single urban data platform based on the open standards, it will support a better ROI on all these vertical solutions that are implemented in cities, because you create a lot of silos that have a need to feed their own ROI. And if you can combine that and use the data, crossover use cases, crossover departments, I know it's not easy, as it isn't in Europe, but that's where we need to focus on. And with the iHub option, Humberto, we spoke about that already a few months ago. If we can make this pay off and see that crossover function and support for cities, it will change. And there's a great opportunity for cities to step into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Albert. Can I ask Philippe to give us a little bit his opinion? Because Philippe, I remember our talks almost 2 years ago, Berlin at night, where we really talked through different verticals and how adoption can work in North America. What's your opinion?
Few things, right? So we're talking about big and broad subjects, and so I would say that technology is one part of it, but it's not the only part, right? So if you're thinking about how industries are gonna adopt this new paradigm of digital twins, right? There are a few things that come into perspective here. The first one is the most important is who owns the data, and who. So we're talking about sharing the data, aggregating data, sharing data between people within ecosystem. And so the first question to think about is who owns the data. And then, of course, when it comes to the consumer, if there are consumers involved, what are the right privacy rules that need to be applied to that data? The second thing that we need to think about, and it's something that probably Albert can talk to me, and the folks at BluSky can talk about better than me, which is kind of the culture. And the business process that needs to be put to bear, right? So we're talking about companies that are used to selling products, and suddenly they are faced with this massive amount of data that is very valuable, but they don't know how much valuable it is, and so they have to understand, what is it that we're talking about and how they are gonna play with that data moving forward. And so I think it's a pretty important problem, and really people have to put their mind around that problem. And then the fourth thing, right, that people need to think about is the amount of investment that is needed in terms of infrastructure in order to build that framework. So when you're thinking about it, right? So we were talking initially about, Humberto was talking about bandwidth, right? And the infrastructure of that is put around bandwidth. But when you're talking about digital twins, you're not only talking about bandwidth, but you're also talking about compute storage. You're also computing infrastructure, so storage as well as CPUs, and all of that is going to have to be invested, and is going to have to be bought and invested and put to bear in very, very important settings like smart cities. And so public-private partnership, like what we're seeing in Europe, right now. It's also something that I see a lot of interesting ideas coming up in the US as well around those topics, and that's also something that is going to be something that need to be put in place in order to be successful in implementing digital twin technologies across the board. And of course, the last thing is technology. So I mean, we are at the first inning in terms of technology. There are many innings to come, and obviously FIWARE is leading the charge there. But when you think about where we are, right? We are if you look at stuff like Tesla from a technology standpoint, so with their software-defined car, right? So we need to create software-defined objects, and then once we've created those software-defined objects, we need to create software-defined flock of objects, like objects interacting with each other. So it's very exciting. So all in all, I would say it's a very vibrant, very exciting space right now. A lot of opportunities everywhere. But really trying to figure out along those four dimensions, right? So one is who owns the data, the culture and business process, the financing, infrastructure, building and financing, and then technology. Those are the four pillars of how that revolution is going to happen.
Oh, that's fantastic, Philippe. I think you're building already the strategy. And by the way, for those who don't know it, FIWARE is PPP born. So we're becoming 5 years this year. The technology is older, okay, but as a foundation, it really was put into place as a PPP, and I think it can be a very successful model. We see that very often also inside our ecosystem. So very nice that you mentioned that. We will talk about the digital twin technology as part of your fourth point also in a minute. But if you allow me, I would love to pick up one topic from the 4 dimensions you mentioned, and that's who owns the data. And before we move to the next question, maybe ask Alex. Alex, you're Vice President of Smart City Advisory Services. I can imagine that you come across such questions. What do you think?
On specifically the issue of ownership of data, it's a really big issue these days, since first of all, it's not really clear who owns the data. I wrote a journal article some time back where I and a couple of researchers looked at about 8 different car manufacturers in the United States who own their own connected car services, and out of them all, only one of them mentioned that the person who's generating the data owns the data. Most of them don't even mention it because they just want access to the data. And it's going to be an even bigger issue. And it's going to be a really big issue here as well, because it's like sometimes when you talk about ownership of data, you might want to connect people who've been posting their location on Facebook with people who've been making mentions on Twitter. So it's like, it's not just, do you own the data? Does Twitter own the data? Does Delta or another airline own the data? It's also, can you get the data intermingle? And even if you do own the data, what do those companies have the right to do with your data? Can you say no? Can you say yes? It's a really big problem, and even though we've been discussing for a few years, we're not much closer to figuring out how to answer all those questions.
Yeah, I can see that. We see that also in Europe very much, and I think that's going to be the more open we go, the more urgent answers are required here.
Can I just interject a little bit? Like, if you're talking about privacy, right? So one of the things that is interesting is that blockchain, right, which is supposed to be the most advanced privacy way to protect your privacy, is actually not GDPR compliant. So it's really interesting to understand the concept of privacy. And the concept of use of data, as Alex was saying, right? Because we really need to understand that if we put privacy regulations that are very restrictive. There are maybe some opportunities in terms of business that may not be able to occur versus if you have a more flexible privacy model, you would be able to tailor the privacy model to the use case that you're going to do. So, I mean, there is a lot of, it's a very interesting and very moving, there is a lot of moving parts here. And it's very interesting because it's very fluid. So we need to be worried about having very, very strict guideline to be put right now.
Thank you. I know that Jem wants to add still to Alex's comments. One minute, please, then we would move to the next question.
Thank you. So I wanted to just quickly summarize, because I do agree with all that's been said. The question of who owns the data really comes down to two questions. One is who legally owns the data, and the second is who owns the data in common business practices. I believe we're really talking about who owns the data in common business practices. What you'll find, especially in a capitalistic market like the US, once a citizen understands how to monetize their data, we won't really have as many of these complex privacy issues, because the issue we have today is that the privacy is really looking to avoid risk, which squeezes out opportunities to Philip's point. When we begin to democratize the data marketplace and citizens can choose green initiatives and green providers as the ones that can follow their data, and they can follow that data from 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. and then turn it off. Why? Because we have a back-end immutable transactionable database. We have a context broker now. We have the ability to put an IOTA digital wallet in the care and management of every citizen. So I think the entire conversation really comes back to, can we market a pathway where the average citizen can take full ownership of the monetization or the security of their data? And then when we map from that perspective, we can understand the rules of engagement as we begin to map that to policies and regulatory oversights. But we may find that some of those, to Philip's point, will be relaxed because they won't be as necessary, because the education of the average citizen will have increased enough that they have an understanding of what the value of that data really is.
Thank you, Jem. This is a very interesting viewpoint from your side, and I saw everybody's heads really buying into this. I wanted to move to the next slide, but I see we have still two topics here that just came in through the chat. Referring really to this discussion, I think it's valid to still try to find an answer. So we have from Stefano de Panfilis the question: is there in the US anything like the data directive, like we know it from the EU, that gives already many answers to the questions, but sometimes it is also pain, okay, because it can also be very restrictive. So is there anything that is coming close to that? And Albert says, why would the European model on data ownership not work in North America? Well, we need to say, I think we could make a separate session only on that. Is there a way we can allow one answer, one person with one answer, and then we have a talk on digital twins? Who wants to pick this up?
I'll be happy to address it if no one else wants to take it. Otherwise, I'll concede.
Jem, that's fine. I think Humberto tried to say something, but again, there is no volume. So, Jem, I'm happy. Just pick it up while Humberto's maybe trying again to to get his volume resolved.
So as far as data sovereignty and the European model, the reason why this has to be addressed with the European model as a reference is because of the political structure of the United States. For instance, you'll find somewhat of a similar structure in Canada as well, and in Mexico as well. And that's really the need to understand that you have federal, state, and local. So when it comes to data ownership, and having worked in government for a number of years in the past, and also higher education, This question is one that's dealt with every day. If you think about law enforcement or what we call privileged justice information system data, well, that's owned up to the FBI, which governs how every state and local law enforcement and CJIS operating entity will conduct that data. I've had issues where the U.S. Attorney General wanted data that was sequestered to the sovereignty of Maryland, and I could not move that data outside of the physical domain of Maryland, so they had to physically come to Maryland in order to access the data. So you have a number of really, I would say, complex issues. What it really comes down to is that FIWARE represents the ability to not simplify, but normalize the data discussion. That's the most important thing. If we can normalize what we've created as a very necessary way of protecting data via multiple agencies, and find a way through a context broker to share the data, but also redact that which is not shareable based on permissions, systems or role-based access control sort of model, we're now in a place where the data flows a little freer, but yet we're removing the risk. Now we're looking at technology that is forward-looking as far as how data packets protect themselves, but that's more futuristic, about 2 to 3 years in the makings. But to Philip and Humberto's point earlier, a lot of this has to do with understanding the value of the resources that FIWARE is bringing in use case, ontology, planning, contextualization that really allows us to normalize the conversation and begin to understand what risk really looks like and what data sharing should be, to measure that against delivery of government services, to measure that against squeezing out costs in government. So we want to build the metrics as the goalpost so that we're not just having a free-fall data discussion, but it's being shaped around very actionable and measurable benefits to citizens, benefits to government agencies that have to service these citizens should be at the forefront. And then we would begin to leverage the research that gives us a clearer picture of what that data.
Thanks so much, Jem. I'll make a quote out of that. Okay, I love your argument when you say to normalize the discussion around data. We can see that in Europe too, and I guess this is something that we can really definitely work together on it as one of the many arguments that you surely brought. I would like to go a little bit into the, if you allow me, please, to go to the next slide now. That will bring us a little bit closer to technology. And Philippe mentioned as one of his fourth points, technology and digital, the digital twin as such was mentioned pretty much by all of you. And I think that's a good moment to also ask Mark, you are the CTO in BluSky. You have wide experience from the development side. We had a chat about digital twins before. Where do you see the major technology trends? And we all know a digital twin is one of them. So where do you see opportunities coming from there?
It's a great question. So what we see and what we're experiencing in the digital twin world as we've started out doing smart venue build-outs is it started with the operational side and bringing that digital knowledge for prescriptive and predictive data analysis. That lasted, what it seemed like was a month, okay? We've now moved way beyond that into incorporating the user experience and the user interface into that digital data realm. So what a lot of companies are doing, and this keys into what Jem was saying before about the data, is most companies and enterprises and cities that we're dealing with now are looking for ways to take that data and put it into two different buckets, so to speak. One is to ensure the safety and health of the citizenship and use that data to leverage that aspect. And the second is to take the technology trend and use that to monetize that data and get a return on investment across a wide venue of arenas. So in essence, where we're seeing technology heading towards, and IT departments, whether they be on an enterprise or a building or a city or community-wide level, they're taking those and weaponizing those IT departments into, instead of being cost centers, being revenue generators for the data that they're producing and leveraging into that.
Thank
Jem,
you. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. I know that if you allow me, I know that. Sorry?
I don't know if you can hear me now.
Yes.
Yes, Humberto, I was just saying, I wanted to give you the word.
Thank you. So just two things I wanted to maybe throw out there. One was really interesting about Jan talking about education. So I think education is key, and not just from the young kids and pre-K, even pre-K, all the way to continue education for adults in the digital skills and entrepreneurship mindset. So that's one. And the other one that I want to touch upon, and I think that'll be interesting to see what FIWARE or how can we work with FIWARE, is cybersecurity. As you all know, the more digital infrastructure, economy, society becomes, we are vulnerable to cyber attacks like we had in the US in the northeast side of the pipeline. So I think it's not only about data privacy, but about our security, cyber security for the country, for the regions, for the cities. And I'll be really interested to learn a little bit more how can we work together with FIWARE and the rest of the iHubs to get into cyber security and a more secure digital technology ecosystem.
Thanks, Humberto. This is really extremely interesting, this discussion, and I also know here we can go much deeper, but would like to refer on something that Juanjo just put here into the chat. For those who have not seen it yet, I would love also all our attendees to have a look at this, because we just launched really today a position paper with FIWARE for digital twins. I guess it's an exciting next step in being really in the front line of this development. And I can only invite everybody to read that position paper. I think it's an exciting insight what can be done already with FIWARE. So you allow me to move this discussion a little bit now into a vertical, a little bit more concrete, into municipalities and public administrations. I know all of you have great experience in that. And let me ask Albert, Albert, where do you think are the challenges for municipalities today? And if you like, maybe also do a little bit of a comparison between Europe and North America.
Well, thank you, Christina. That's an interesting question. Let's make that a bit bigger. If we divide the world in three pillars, we have the Emirates and Asia. Where there's money to invest, we invest, they invest money, sometimes to showcase something, to deal with real issues, but they own it, they invest. In Europe, it's smaller scale, smaller problems, more focused on environment and how it's working, creating the healthy lifestyles, supporting a healthy environment for citizens. So it's about traffic. We're living in more condensed cities, so traffic is providing a serious issue on health with local emissions and sound pressure. If you look at the North Americans, and I put it in the chat here, you all talk about monetization of data, but that is by itself a topic we can discuss for more than one day, because the data by itself will not bring you any value. The way you can combine the data to add and create new values out of combined data, making it available to realize your goals, that's what's going to help. And here's where the challenge is for municipalities. It's about the low budgets they have. That's not true. Cities have a lot of money. We pay a lot of taxes. But it's the way that we allow them to deal with that money and make it work or not work for us. But if the challenge is health, reduce cost and impact on medical care, if you look at safety, public safety, and I know we do a lot of sound measurements and sound pressure measurements in cities in Europe, and we're always challenged, can you hear and detect gunshots? Being a former police officer, yes, we can, but then you're too late. You need to respond before the gun's fired. So that is something in creating and having the data to make that livable city work for you. And then you can start talking about monetization, because then you add value to the citizens' daily lives. And that's the biggest challenge for all municipalities.
Yeah, very, very good point, Albert. Let's see, Philippe, you have also wide experience there. Also because you're very open-minded as you travel between continents. What's your opinion there when it comes to municipalities?
So, Christina, great question, and building on what Albert was saying. I mean, if you look at the necessary infrastructure for a municipality, right? Basically, it comes down to three big buckets. The first one, and all of them are supported by open source, and at the end of the day, FIWARE has a role to play in federating all of it, as Juanjo is mentioning is his white paper on digital twins. The first one is you need to have an interoperable infrastructure. And we talk about IoT, we talk about edge computing, making sure that the infrastructure can talk to each other is very important for any type of structure like the municipalities at this point, right? So talking to each other and being able to exchange information at the cheapest cost possible is very important. The second one is a layer above, right? So it's the ability to be able to create this new set of customization, right, of hardware and applications around with of course the data platform as the base to have the data go from one place to the other, but then artificial intelligence to start making sense of that data and organize the knowledge, if you will. So that's kind of the second layer, and of course that layer is very industry specific, right? So it's very domain knowledge and abstracted from the infrastructure. But the second point, and the third one, is about trust, and so it's all this layer of trust that is going to be required to enable device and people to transact with each other based on pre-existing and agreed upon smart contract, right? So that's kind of the blockchain DLT type technologies, and FIWARE, is at the middle of all of that, as Jem was saying, and can be the place that can federate all of that, so that people can access the data and do things with the data.
Yeah, thanks, Philippe. This was also a lot about technology, the use of technology, and the different facets of it. We also know that the markets as such are very different when we move from domain to domain. I just remember a discussion with a politician some time ago when he said, why we cities are always so slow. By the way, this was before COVID, just before COVID, that he said that. He says, because we can never make an error. We want to try out things, but we're not allowed to make errors because we use tax money. And I was just thinking, myself has worked 20 years in the industry, especially in automation and in the wider industry field. And there it was exactly the opposite. There were a lot of sandboxes, a lot of areas where you could try out things because it's important to make you innovative and keep you innovative and win in the market. So very different approach. So let's move to the next chapter here and have a similar question, but looking a little bit into Industry 4.0. So what could FIWARE mean for Industry 4.0 or for anything that has to do with the adoption and digitalized adoption of FIWARE, but in general, the digitalization of the industry vertical? Let me go to Alex. Alex, do you want to take this on?
I think I'll defer to.
We need to pay attention that Jem doesn't speak all the time here. I know Albert has also a lot to say. I know that. Let's ask first Albert, and I go back to Jem afterwards. Thanks. In the name of Atos.
In the name of Atos. Okay, my field of specialty is more the cities, but looking at the industry, the connected way of industries, the connected way of consumers to logistics and logistics to producers, we are tying the knots here. And here's where you discuss with data ownership, you discuss with privacy, you discuss, it all comes together in a way that we add data into an environment. That's called just an environment for the sake of the argument and not discuss what it really is. But we need to combine it, put it in the context of the user. So in the industry section, we see this as well in the partners of the production line. There's no industry anymore that produces all the parts they need. It's connecting, combining, and it's putting these resource constraints in the context of the demand side and building. Well, the old verb for this was just-in-time manufacturing. We're still in that space. We don't produce for storage. We produce to order, and producing to order means in Industry 4.0, not just the production lines connectivity, but also the connectivity to your end consumer. As an example, I graduated on a model for Toyota factories. Was in the 80s. If a Toyota was sold, that same model was put on the list of manufacturing, and the automated plant would create that same Toyota Celica as was sold in Europe. So that's already a front runner idea on what Industry 4.0 will be. And with North America, with all the connected plants, lowering the pressure on unnecessary logistics. I mean, all these long-haul trucks that drive with goods, if you really can tie that knot in a just-in-time model with an Industry 4.0 approach, it will save a lot of money on this. It save a lot of cost and okay, yeah, maybe it will cost some jobs, but hey, if logistics is not the place to work, there's another place in that line because your industry will grow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Albert, and I'm sure Jem will comment on that. Am I right?
If I may, Christina, just jump real quick into that. There's just two things. One, on January this year, President Biden signed an executive order for reviewing the supply chain of the U.S. So to see where the security from the supply chain from all the industries are. So that's one. And the other one is they just launched he signed another executive order for Made in America by America. So we're going to look at nearshoring, like a really big trend in nearshoring. So at the end of the day, we're going to see some of the supply chains coming back to America and start producing and manufacturing in America. So I think that's going to be a real game changer to take into account. And I think open source can play a big role there.
Thank you, Humberto. This is a really very excellent point. I'm happy that you brought that up. Can I then ask one question to you, Humberto, again, but also to Jem? How do you see then a technology that is European born playing in this? Will that find acceptance, or do you see that rather difficult, or is there any particular strategies that we would need to follow, which is almost also an industry independent question, but in our case, obviously now also about industry and maybe also about municipalities.
Sure.
I don't know if you want to go first, Jen.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think it's going to be industry and region located. For example, the circular economy. The circular economy in the US, most of the people think of recycling on steroids, right? Which it's a different concept in Europe. It's from design to all the way to how can we make gold out of what they call waste in the US, right? So I think if we get technology into that new industry, if you will, circular economy or clean tech, I think that there will be a lot of, I'll say, a welcome the technology. There are some others that are really tricky, like cybersecurity, space tech, defense, etc. That I don't think that could fly. But for example, for the cities, waste management, management of transport, mobility, I think there's a really interesting opportunity to get that European technology into the US and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Jem?
Thanks, Christina, and thanks, Humberto. I appreciate your comments. If we look at Industry 4.0 really quickly and just provide what I call a normalized definition for the comments that will be shared. So I'm not saying I'm defining it, I'm just saying for the comments I'm about to provide you, Industry 4.0 is defined as physical, digital, and biological integration.
Yep.
We know this. Why would FIWARE be such a disruptive or controversial adoption question in terms of North America? I think it really points to the fact that Industry 4.0 and FIWARE are bringing together the technology that's going to be closest to the everyday lives of citizens in the Western Hemisphere. That's different because we're not necessarily saying that every citizen is going to choose the city they live in based on how smart it is. However, we know that we're only a generation from those types of discussions coming to bear. So going into Industry 4.0 and looking at FIWARE and the US adoption, what we're saying is that we don't have a conflict. Why? Because FIWARE did it right. Not because of the greatness of the US or the greatness of Europe. FIWARE understood they needed a malleable, extendable, integratable, open source architecture that could become what it needs to be based on the vertical assessment and research and design activities that we are talking about embarking upon. If FIWARE were rooted into and hard-coded into policies and regulations that were only conducive to the European market, absolutely this would be an impossible task on our part. However, it's just the opposite. We can extract, we can extract, we can use, we can add to, we can modify that which makes sense to the Western Hemisphere nations and government leadership that deems that so. That's a really interesting thing because if you go back to your previous question, you said, what are the challenges of municipalities? Well, the challenges really are urbanization, space, and COVID-like pandemic responses, because we can't assume that COVID is a one-time thing. This type of virus is easily spread, and we know mutations are out there. So urbanization is really defined in terms of economic development, in terms of public safety, in terms of wellness and health. So if you look at these particular contexts, contextualization activities that FIWARE has spent so much time and invested so much resources into, I believe you guys hit it on the head, because it's the contextualization that we are looking to modify. And it makes no sense to start from a blank page when we can actually take what is applied. And because we understand the European economy, we have to.
It sounds really wonderful to hear that you think FIWARE has done already everything right. So that's, we'll take this on. But this brings me actually to a point. Let's say, yes, that's really right. And and together with the effects that we can currently see in the market. You mentioned also COVID-19, but then there is also many other areas where speed is now required. We have seen that also in Europe, by the way, for smart cities, that suddenly they're catching up tremendously, but also not finding themselves in an easy time to know exactly where to start, where to start in general, right? There's just a big mountain of things in front of them, but they're catching up with a state of the art that you might find maybe in other countries or continents. But one of the let's say, hurdles, once you've done everything right, can be that you just don't find the people helping you and realizing all your plans. And with that, I would, and you mentioned also a little bit like that, Humberto, bring us to the next question that is about education, obviously, but also about the final product of education, which is educated people that can help in implementing new strategies. So honestly, I would love to place this question to all of you. Who wants to pick up and give the first word about what does that mean really for careers? What do you think? Who is first in raising a hand?
I'm not going to raise my hand yet, although I want to.
Can I respond then first, Christina?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, let's not do the discussion on data ownership and open data, etc. But if you think of an open eco-partner system within the city to achieve the city goals, that could be based on data, sharing data, startups, new companies, new functions have a better place to start and get educated and get growing from a local economy to a national economy. And data is the driver for a lot of new opportunities. And working with the universities and helping students to understand how to get the power out of the data that's available, that is a whole business. Just the user groups you can identify yourself with, people with disabilities that need to travel through the city, people with lung diseases that want to get warnings about air quality, and so many specific topics. There is an audience for this type of solution that's based on data that's basically for free, and with some advertisement money, with some maybe some support from health organization, these startups could push that value into it, and there will be a demand from us as citizens. So there is good opportunity for careers in new startups if we start working with open source, open standard solution as FIWARE is promoting.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, I see that, Albert. I want to ask Philippe. Philippe, you, I'm not quite sure where you're currently sitting, but I know you spend most of your life in Silicon Valley, right? Yep. So, how do you see that? Being there, but also in one of, let's say, the hotspots of innovation and disruption, but also as a person that visits lots of companies and accompanies them in adoption of certain data models. Where do you see this point?
I mean, so a few things, right? So one is Silicon Valley. I've been in Silicon Valley for the last 30 years. And I've seen Silicon Valley evolving over time, right? And where I think we all agree on this panel that we're facing a technology wave that is probably as big as all the others that we've seen combined. It's that big. It's kind of I mean, we spend the entire 30 years connecting people to the internet, and now we're connecting objects, and it's just changing everything. It's just changing the way. Now we're not only going to have to interact with people, but we're also going to have to interact with objects. So if you're thinking about Silicon Valley right now, I mean, we're right at the cusp of that. We're just seeing it, and it's just the amount of activity that is happening is just amazing. There is a new flavor, a new revived flavor around anything that is semiconductor. You know, a lot of the manufacturing is now coming back from China into the US, and so there are a lot of opportunities around manufacturing and semiconductor today and of course, like for everything that is edge computing and edge AI. There is a lot of activities around those things, so there is a lot of opportunities there. I think there is a lot of opportunities in what Albert was talking about, which was leveraging the data that is being created. We don't even know right now how much data and what is the scope of the data that all the data that is going to be created, but it's a lot, right? So there are probably a lot of opportunities of startup to be created in that space. And then we should not so semiconductor data, and then we should not forget implementation of those technologies, right? Because there is going to be a lot of requirements, a lot of investment to be made in the next 10 years for those, and probably beyond to put those technologies to bear. And so a lot of opportunities around management and management of implementation of technologies, I think. So those would be the three things. And for Silicon Valley, we're just right in the middle of it. We are very happy that now other cities are taking over some level of innovation as well, because there is so much innovation, so much wealth to be created that Silicon Valley by itself would explode if they were taking advantage of everything by themselves.
Yeah. Philippe, thanks. That was a great insight. Yeah, so let's say then good times for people who want to create great careers, and we shouldn't have really jobless people if they all go into that space to work. The only thing I can say, I know we want to go on and grow also FIWARE technical specialists, and it's not only about a technical specialist, obviously also about management and people working then in the industry, in the cities, and really implementing what's required. This brings me, let's say we've done everything right in terms of technology and what we offer. We do have the people around that can do the job. Now, this brings me to the, let's say, last third of our session today, that is more about how can we make it really a success. And when we look to the next question that shows that should be seen on our slides now, exactly, thank you. So what is really the mission critical resource, or what makes FIWARE a mission critical resource? And Franco shared with us before the digital twin position paper. We also brought another one out just today during our FIWARE Smart Days, which is about data spaces. And we also run, by the way, a few sessions on day 2 of FIWARE Smart Fest that is about data spaces and data sovereignty. I believe this is already very mission critical, but I would love to know from Mark. Mark, what do you think?
I knew you were going there.
Yeah, you knew that. But I think you're perfect for this. Come on. What could make FIWARE mission critical resource here?
So it's a pretty broad topic.
Yeah, it is. I know.
It's always nice when I get the broad ones. So I would say from mission critical, what makes FIWARE and digital twins in general. And I'm going to sort of tie this back into all the previous discussions. So it really envelops everything that you've been talking about previously in the past 4 questions. So as we move into the digital twin world and it becomes more adaptive to an enterprise, building a community, a nation, what we're seeing is the jobs that are being created are going to be more of the gig economy type, because the data is growing so exponentially and so rapidly that it's consuming our energy resources very quickly. And that is going to require a lot of people, not just to do the data analytics, as Albert was alluding to, and Jem earlier, and Philippe, but also from the standpoint of the maintenance. As we move into artificial intelligence and augmented reality for all these things, the process of building out the technologies into making and generating the data, we're now going into the administration and the management of that data. So there's a lot of opportunities there. And what makes the FIWARE critical is the open source. In America right now, in North America, we have, 50, 60 different digital twin platforms that are cropping up on a daily basis. They're all fragmented to some degree and specialized to some degree. Some are focused on just bringing in the building construction trades. Some are focused in on just integrating the building sensors. Some are focused on behavioral statistics. With FIWARE, what makes it mission critical is we have an open source that is not locked into just a unique set of standards or protocols, and that when a community or a nation adopts this type of model, what we're seeing and going to see is that things will change, as they invariably do. So we don't get it right the first time. History has proven that, as we've noticed. So going back to your statement before about politicians not wanting to make mistakes, they make mistakes all the time. Countries do, cities do. The trick is, A, not to get caught making a mistake, and B, if you do get caught, not to have to take ownership of that mistake. So having said that, the open source allows you to make the mistakes that will invariably happen and interchangeably remove those mistakes without having to tear down and start everything from scratch. So it's nice that we have so many different IoT platforms cropping up and that the adoption of digital twinning is accelerating at a rapid pace. But as we move into larger venues and not smaller enterprise venues, the platform is not a forklift type of thing, and it needs to be an open source type of environment where we can make that interchangeable and move part A out and put part B in its place and allow it to take on Industry 4.0. So that is going to be through the modeling and the incremental staging of something. We can't do everything all at once, whether that be in a factory plant or in a town or community. But as you build the foundation through an open source platform, that gives you the opportunity to gather the data, put it into a model, try it out, test it, and hopefully eliminate a lot of those mistakes before they're even launched.
Thank you, Mark. Absolutely. And
long-winded answer, sorry.
Yeah, but it covered really lots of great arguments, and I would like to bring these arguments now again towards a vertical focus. We have one more question also around smart cities, and I would love to ask Alex and Albert to comment on that. I think our slides got lost. Let's see if Karen is still in, who can share our slides. Karen, is there any message? I think she dropped out. Okay, this can happen. However, I will just let you know what our question is. It was about smart cities, and let me bring it up here on my side again. So FIWARE as best practice for smart cities, obviously in North America. Alex, do you want to comment on that? And then we have obviously Albert. I know it's a sweet spot when it comes to smart cities, so I'm also excited to get to see his opinion here. Alex, you first.
Looks like we lost Alex.
Oh, they're just not helping.
Okay.
Alex is back.
I think I'm back. I thought I lost you all.
Yeah, we lost you.
Back.
We have you back, Alex. The question is about best practices on smart cities. Can you see FIWARE there, or what's your opinion in general?
On developing best practices or existing best practices?
Well, I could put the question also, FIWARE today, as a de facto standard in Europe, can obviously already provide lots of best practices. We have also just brought out the Smart Cities booklet that represents almost 50 cities worldwide already working on FIWARE. There's many, many more, but the first edition covered that part of cities, giving actually best practices in many different areas. The question would be, no, I cannot expect that you read this book that just came out, but can existing best practices work for North America? And if not, how would, let's say, how would best practices needed to be developed if you think that there is a gap?
I mean, I haven't had enough time to run through the pamphlet, but I should preface my answer by saying that when we say North America, we're talking about a continent with more than 450 people, 450 million people, much bigger and difficult with that kind of number. And when we're talking about North America, we usually mean a place like the United States, which is 330 million people. The people of Massachusetts may have different practices from that of Florida, which then again from Texas. And never mind California, who much of the East Coast, and I assume most other coasts, believe is on another planet entirely. That's when we're not talking about Mexico, Canada, etc. So it's like, it depends on what those best practices are. Some of the tech is acultural, as it were, but some of it either won't be accepted immediately because it wasn't invented here, or because it's based off of practices that may have worked well in Germany and France, but not necessarily the United Kingdom or Slovenia. So it's like at that point, some of those best practices can definitely be inserted into the United States. I can say that without having read enough of the pamphlet to say it. But some
okay, so what you mean, what you however are saying is we would need to have a deeper look into what best practices could really mean and if they could work. Albert, do you agree, or is there anything you would love to add to this?
I would like to comment on that. Of course, the way the American government is structured is different, and the way the collaboration between government agencies and departments is different. Nevertheless, if you look at the challenge of limited budgets and the goals you want to achieve, I was working with Kansas City, Missouri. Sorry, that was a joke. It's not Missouri, it's Missouri.
Close, really close.
Knowing people living in Kansas City, really talk about misery sometimes. But okay, that's I was working closely with Bob Bannett at the time, where transportation, safety, health, all these different topics came together, and they were piling it up in silos, and it was not bringing the benefits. So the best practice of sharing data, building up a common data environment, a common data platform with open standards to allow the police to access the data on lighting and control lighting. The example here is, and this is not a joke, this is a serious discussion I had with the chief of police. If you go into an area with a domestic fight is being called in, and they go on site, and they witness the fact that there is a gun-related threat for the police officers. They can't control the light. They get out of the car and they're in full light of the street lights. What if the data and platform and the interaction would allow that cop, before he leaves the car, or maybe the guy on the dispatch station, shut down 1, 2, or 3 streetlights in that street to make sure they give coverage of the police officer? And here's what the answer of the police chief was: we have to do it ourselves. So they shoot out 500 streetlights every year to cover because they were in broad light. Now, changing streetlights to LED means from 1 bulb you go to 18 or to 9, and then you need to have 9 shots to kill a streetlight. You should not miss, because that leaves you with 1 bullet to save your own life. So it's that challenge. So the best practice of combining cross departments data sets in an open standard environment is a best practice you can take from Europe. This is what we do in cities. In Eindhoven, we have 1 platform. We cover public safety. With the same platform, we monitor traffic on the Beltway. We see what's happening on secure incident. And now we're working with Philips Medical on health issues for citizens that want to change their lifestyles. We get football players from the national team to act as a role model and share the data in the platform, because with the minimum interoperability mechanism, we can ensure that privacy is maintained. So best practices can be shared, and it is not necessarily to discuss the region or the area. It's the challenge you have and the way you want to fight that challenge.
I think, Albert, this is a very, very good topic that gives me the feeling that we need to take this really on also to a next session. This could also fill a full afternoon to discuss. Thank you for this input. I would now like to ask all of you for one last statement for the minutes that we still have with regard to the following question. So how do we want to accelerate the adoption of FIWARE in North America? If you had the 1, 2, or 3 things that you would put first, what would that be? And I would just say, let's run from one to another of our fantastic panelists and workshop workers with us tonight. So if you allow me, I will just pick or call you up in a sequence as almost we started at the very beginning here in the session, and would be happy if you keep it to maximum 3 arguments. So how do we want to accelerate the adoption of FIWARE in North America? Jem, do you like to start?
Sure, and I'll keep it very brief. And again, thank you, Christina, for doing a fantastic job of moderating us to this discussion. So it really begins with understanding how to transfer the benefits of FIWARE to a value mapping to the local economies and the local municipalities that our leadership bound to do the best they can for their particular constituents in their geographic area. So the benefits of FIWARE, I think we've really driven into that. I want to pivot and look at FIWARE from a city municipality perspective. So if you look at FIWARE and what it represents in a value proposition, number one is it drives out the opportunity costs in a way that's just almost completely unmeasurable. When we looked at the cost of deploying a smart city architecture and a digital twin, we were definitely pivoting to an open source solution, and we began to do this research a few years ago. The second thing is risk mitigation. Looking at FIWARE from a municipality perspective, you've taken so much of that extra R&D effort to drive risk. That is so incredibly important to a city. Next, you have this, what I call the light bulb going on. And it takes a minute and we've had these conversations, and it's more of a collaboration. The light bulb is this. You have a local economy now powered by FIWARE that is now independent of its physical borders, yet that does not mean that that local economy is the national or global economy yet. What it means is that FIWARE has opened up the portal to the ability to grow a local economy into an area that no longer is bound by its physical location. And lastly, it's advanced wellness and advanced education delivered where the city becomes a living classroom. Please, when I say education, I'm not talking about sitting in a lecture-based hall or a classroom. I'm saying that the entire city becomes a classroom. And because of what we can bring as far as intelligence and data, we begin to take our partners on this journey to start to think outside of the box before we get too emboldened in what are the differences. Let's look at the value proposition, and then we can start to map best practices from the value proposition. Then we can
Thank you so much, Jem. Thanks.
Thank you.
I will give also to the others still a chance to speak. So no, I appreciate it. Lots of great arguments. I would love to listen to you all for the next 2 hours, Jem. But let's have also Humberto. I saw you're absolutely buying into this. So what is your last statements in terms of acceleration in North America?
Well, I think there's, I'll say 2. One, and then touch into that really magnificent is education. So education is, I think, the most important part to grow the FIWARE ecosystem. So that's one. And that needs resources from the FIWARE Foundation, and not just financial, but all sorts of resources to enter the largest market in the world, the US, right? So that's one. And the other one, I would say, we need a couple of champion cities. For example, I've been working with the circular economy topic in the last year, and it's been like when you get two champions, then you can replicate, scale, and it's like people look at that city or company or region as, I want to do that. So I think if we can build two champion cities using FIWARE, then you have a success story like the ones you showcase in some of the reports you have. So I think that those two, one is education and resources, and the other one is let's have two champion cities, and I'm sure from there we can really grow the ecosystem.
Thank you so much, Humberto. Then Albert.
Yeah, for me it's a stepping stone process. So first, I have students, startups, getting the community growing, make sure that more people are aware and use it. Targeting, I would say, with what Humberto's saying, some champion cities, but focus on the areas that need the support, that do not have the big budgets, are not a focus. Humberto, we discussed that once. If you look at Austin to San Antonio, you have the smaller city, Fredericksburg, Brownsville. All these cities have the same challenges, not the opportunity. And with the change after COVID, that people leave expensive areas to live in, like Silicon Valley, then can work from home wherever they live. And these areas, if they can present themselves as being a smart area with more solutions, with more transparent connection to the citizens based on the data that's available, here is where your challenge is, and to create that champion city, Humberto. This is what I would really believe in and help to achieve that.
Thank you so much, Albert. Philippe, I would pass over to you. So where do you think is the biggest accelerators for FIWARE in North America?
So Christina, great question. I'm going to start coming back to what Mark was mentioning when he said that there was about 29 digital twin technology emerging in the US. And I don't know if he was saying it was every day, but I'm pretty sure it's close to every month, one digital twin technology a day. And in those type of market, right? So the US are a big market as well as a very competitive market. And so you as Humberto was saying, you need to invest resources. And so being there physically is invest resources, both financial, but as Humberto was saying, people is going to be very important for FIWARE to be successful in the US. The second point is about leveraging the open source world. You're already doing that with the Linux Foundation, but there are a lot of other organizations that are leveraging standards, that are building and developing standards for that industry. And so, working in partnership with all those technologies to promote the FIWARE agenda would be really interesting.
Thanks, Philippe. And I'm also happy that you mentioned standardization again. I believe there is so much more we can do and bring FIWARE in as a recognized existing or future bringing standard in many of the fields of technology and industry. Alex, how about you?
I'd say, to build off Humberto's point as well as a couple others, it's important not just to focus on finding a couple of champion cities, but also finding industries that are interested in what FIWARE can offer, and basically can do it. Because it's one thing to come in to, say, Pittsburgh and say, we have FIWARE, we can do X, Y, and Z. But it's another to go in and have everyone hear you at the same time, think, oh, is this for me? That sort of thing. So it's like, you're there in the city of Pittsburgh, you've got a big health industry. You have a lot of robotics people already. But you also have people who've been, who've been more involved in the steel side of things, people who aren't more on restaurants, and they're probably thinking, okay, there's this big tech thing. What does this mean to me? How does this matter?
Yep.
To a degree, you need to communicate with them, talk with them, see what they're interested in, and get them interested in what you have to offer. The best practices document is a good place to start, because even if one of the best practices may not particularly apply to Pittsburgh, it may get them thinking, oh, I can still think of something from this that might help my role particularly well. And that way you can sort of get them to build up over time. I say Pittsburgh, but it could also be someplace in Mexico, Canada, somewhere else. Just look at a few industries, talk to them, think about it.
Alex, that's a very good advice, very hands-on. And with that, Mark, the last person, for the last person, it's always the most difficult because so many things that are already said. But if that's okay for you, also still the final comments from your side when it comes to accelerators that you believe should be the first ones to look at.
Sure. So seeing as everybody, as I'm going last, I'll keep it to one, but I'll make it a big one. Okay. So I'm going to swing away from the tangible, the intangible side and the politics over to the nerdy side of things. I think one of the biggest accelerators that you could have for FIWARE and digital twins in general is the adaptation and the embracing and the migration towards the 5G roadmap. So all this data that we're generating, everything that we're doing as a goal, it all boils down to connectivity. We need connectivity to the sensors. That might be in a small site, several thousand, going up to, in a community, millions and tens of millions of sensors. The current technology that we have for connecting to all of this is very fractionalized. So you have Wi-Fi, you have broadband, we have IP networks for direct connect, we have LoRa, we have cellular, we have private LTE, we have Zigbee, we have RFID, Bluetooth. It just goes on and on and on. There's about 40 of them. What we need is to take that fractionalization through the 5G roadmap and bring it into a cohesive and unified environment that FIWARE can get all the data and all the necessary touch points that it needs to make this easy for each individual that's launching FIWARE to get that data into a single data lake or a data warehouse, or even multiples if you want it to be that way. But that connectivity is the foundation for everything that FIWARE is doing. And the sooner that we promote and engage the 5G roadmap and the connectivity that brings into FIWARE, the faster we're going to accelerate that into all the towns, cities, states, and various other places that we want to go to in North America.
Wow.
Yep.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I have to really say I'm so excited when now listening to all of you at the very end of our session today, not only at the end of the FIWARE Smart Fest day one, last session, but also at the end of the session to bring all your major statements together that allow us actually to write a business plan out of that. But it also shows that many of the topics that you mentioned, when it comes to digital twin, to data spaces, to certain standardization approaches that FIWARE runs already, bring us already into kind of pole position to help make it really quick start, or even a more intensive activity or success for North America. I think we all agree there is so much, there's so many opportunities ahead of us, many more than we can actually address. So one topic will also be focalization. We're always very happy to have really great partnerships around us, an ecosystem that when we bring all the brains together, actually make us stronger than any other player in the world. And especially when we have our collaborative opportunities that we've shown we can manage very well, we're mostly very successful. So I think with all that was said today, we can really make it actually an activity plan. I will also take on some of the suggestions, especially the one on data monetization and a few other topics where I felt you really love to discuss much deeper. And I can see that also from the community that they love to go deeper there. So we pick that up and come with a good opportunity over the next weeks to talk deeper. So said that, I want to thank you all for the time you stayed with us today and the great preparation. So many thanks to Jem, Mark, and Alex who prepared with FIWARE together today's session and on a deep detail. But obviously the same thanks goes also to Albert, to Humberto, and to Philippe, with the many years of experience they have in their field, really contributed tremendously a lot of know-how, and I have to say in this case also best practices to today's, let me call it really workshop, but one that was very, very future looking. And thank you so much for your time and sharing all your expertise with us, with FIWARE and the community. So said that, I wish you all, wherever you are, a great afternoon, a great evening. And most of you, I think I see also over the next 2 days. If not, still sign up to FIWARE SmartFest. We have 2 more days to go. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye. Take care.
Bye-bye. Make FIWARE cool again.